There's something they never told you about Scorpios, not your friends, not your favorite astrologer, not even your parents, unless they were the kind of people who saw the world through divine eyes. You see, when most people look at a Scorpio, they only see the surface. They see the cold stare, the quiet distance, the piercing silence that cuts deeper than any sword. Some are afraid of it, others are drawn to it, but very few ever understand it, because Scorpio is not a sign you can decode with logic. Scorpio is a soul frequency, and God, the eternal, all-seeing creator, never needed a birth chart to understand them, while the world tries to label Scorpio as too much, too dark, too intense. God looks at them and sees something different, something holy, something rare, something that many people will never understand until they too have walked through fire and come out reborn. In fact, if you've ever felt misunderstood as a Scorpio, if you've ever walked through betrayal, suffered in silence, healed in darkness, and still chose not to become bitter, this message is for you, because what if I told you God sees you? Not the mask, not the mistakes, but the real you, the warrior, the protector, the healer, the one who carries the truth even when the world runs from it. In today's message, I'm going to share 12 powerful ways God sees a Scorpio, the parts of you no one talks about, but heaven has never stopped watching. Each of these truths reveals why your path is different and why your spirit was built for more. This is not just astrology, this is soul work. So if you're a Scorpio or someone who loves one, don't skip this, because by the end of this video, you'll see yourself through God's eyes. And when that happens, you'll never look at yourself the same again. Reason 1, God sees Scorpio's pain, hidden beneath silence. When God looks at a Scorpio, He doesn't just see their strength, He sees their sufferings. Not the part they show the world, but the part they hide behind locked doors, tight smiles, and eyes that have seen too much, too young. Because no one hides pain quite like a Scorpio. To others, they seem tough, cold, composed. People say nothing bothers them or they don't care. But those people are wrong. Scorpios feel everything. They feel too much. So much that it hurts to even speak it. So they don't. They go quiet. And in that silence, God listens. You see, while the world rewards loudness, while people beg for attention, Scorpio slips into the background, wounded but unbroken. They won't tell you they're hurting. They won't beg for comfort. They won't post their pain on social media looking for likes. Instead, they disappear. They sit alone with their grief, their disappointment, their heartbreak, and they let it wash over them like a tide in the dark. Not because they're weak, but because they've learned that not everyone deserves access to their soul. But God sees it all. Every unspoken betrayal, every tear wiped in silence, every smile worn like armor while their heart bled beneath. Let me tell you a story. There was a Scorpio man who lost the love of his life to betrayal. She lied. She left. She never looked back. And though he was devastated, he didn't rage. He didn't chase her. He didn't tell the world his story. He simply vanished. Weeks passed, then months. Friends assumed he was fine. He never talks about it, so he must have moved on. But what they didn't see was the way he stopped sleeping, the way he prayed in the dead of night asking, God, what's wrong with me? Why did she leave? The way he replayed every moment, wondering if love had been real at all. And yet, even in that pain, he never turned bitter. He never hurt others to numb his own ache. He suffered silently, with honor, with pride, with the same depth he once loved. That is how God sees Scorpio, as the warrior who bleeds alone, but never lets it spill onto anyone else, as the soul who feels everything, yet never burdens others with their fire, as the protector who suffers in secret, just so no one else has to. Scorpio is not cold, they're sacred. Because in a world addicted to drama and noise, Scorpio chooses stillness, and God, the eternal witness, is drawn to that silence. He meets them there, he heals them there, and make no mistake, God doesn't overlook their pain. He records it, he honors it, he repays it, in power, in wisdom, in clarity. You see, Scorpio's pain isn't wasted. It becomes prophecy. It becomes purpose. It becomes the fire they'll one day rise from, stronger than before and untouched by the very people who tried to destroy them. Life lesson. If you are a Scorpio, or if you've ever loved one, remember this: the deepest pain is often hidden in the quietest soul. But silence doesn't mean God isn't listening. In fact, it's in that silence that he does his greatest work. So the next time you suffer quietly, know that heaven is not blind. Your tears may fall in secret, but your healing is witnessed in full. God sees you, Scorpio, and he loves you, not just for your strength, but for how you endure pain without turning cruel. Reason 2. God sees Scorpio's loyalty tested through betrayal. When God looks at a Scorpio, he sees something this world rarely celebrates anymore: loyalty, not convenience, not attachment, not the kind of loyalty that disappears when it gets uncomfortable, but a sacred kind of loyalty, one that Scorpio lives and breathes even when it breaks them. Scorpio doesn't give their trust easily. They study people, they observe, they wait. But once they choose you all the way. No halfway commitment, no fake love, no only when it benefits me type of loyalty. Scorpio commits like a sacred vow, heart, soul, shadow, and light. And yet, the more loyal they are, the more likely they are to be betrayed. Because not everyone understands what it means to be chosen by a Scorpio. Not everyone deserves it. Some people take it for granted, some abuse it. Some think they'll never leave, they're too loyal. But what they don't realize is this: God is watching. God sees every secret Scorpio kept to protect someone else's reputation. He sees the way they defended people who would never do the same in return. He sees how Scorpios stayed, even when their heart was crumbling, because they couldn't bring themselves to abandon someone they once called family, lover, or friend. And when that loyalty is shattered, when betrayal comes, Scorpio doesn't scream, they don't beg, they don't warn you, they just leave. Not because they stopped loving, but because they finally realized God never asked them to sacrifice their soul for someone who wouldn't even protect their name. Let me share something real. A Scorpio man I once knew had a friend for over 12 years, someone he treated like a brother. He'd helped him through addiction, through divorce, through poverty. When everyone else walked away, Scorpio stood by him. But one day, that same brother lied about him in public, threw him under the bus to save face in front of others. And just like that, Scorpio's loyalty was burned alive. Did he confront him? No. Did he seek revenge? No. He simply cut the connection in complete silence, because that's how Scorpio handles betrayal. Not with drama, but with the kind of detachment that feels eternal. And here's what most people don't understand. That silence, it isn't coldness, it's mourning. Scorpio isn't just letting go of a person. They're grieving the version of themselves that once believed in that person. They're grieving the sacred trust that was shattered. And God, He sees that. He knows Scorpio would have walked through fire for that person. He knows they fought to believe in someone long after they stopped believing in themselves. God saw the loyalty no one thanked them for, and He saw the moment Scorpio finally said, "No more," because loyalty is holy. And when it's abused, God responds. Scorpio may not speak up, but heaven always settles the score. Life. Lesson, Scorpio. Your loyalty is a rare and sacred gift. Don't give it to people who see it as currency. Give it to those who understand its weight and protect it like it's priceless. And if you've ever had to walk away from someone you would have died for, know that God saw it. He witnessed your faithfulness, and He honors it, not with pity, but with purpose. Sometimes the door that betrayal slams shut is the same door God uses to walk you toward destiny. Reason 3. God sees Scorpio's fire, hidden beneath calm. When God looks at a Scorpio, He doesn't see still water. He sees lava beneath the ocean, unseen, unshaken, but undeniably alive. Because while the world thinks Scorpio is calm, cold, and in control, what they don't realize is that beneath that steady surface burns a fire that could scorch the soul. Scorpio's energy is elemental. It's not the kind of fire that flickers. It's not petty rage. It's not emotional outbursts. No. Scorpio's fire is sacred. It is slow-burning, ancient, and rooted in something spiritual. And God, the creator of all fire and all oceans, sees it clearly. You see, Scorpio was born with two extremes inside: stillness that looks like peace, fire that feels like war, and most people only see the first. They say, "You're so calm, you're so composed. You don't even react." But calm doesn't mean passive, and silence doesn't mean soft. In fact, Scorpio's calm is what protects the world from their fire, because Scorpio is not here to explode. They are here to transmute, to transform every ounce of rage, betrayal, and injustice into something greater. Let me share a story. A Scorpio woman I knew once worked under a boss who constantly undermined her. He stole her ideas, mocked her in meetings, gave her credit away like it meant nothing, but she never raised her voice. She never fought back publicly. She simply took notes. She stayed late. She outworked everyone. Until one day, the entire leadership team was restructured. And guess who was chosen to lead? She was. And the man who underestimated her, he now reported to her. Did she humiliate him? No. Did she seek revenge? No. She simply held him accountable, professionally, calmly, and with a grace that made others respect her even more. That's Scorpio's fire. It doesn't burn to destroy. It burns to purify. God sees that. He sees the moments Scorpio could have lashed out, but didn't. He sees the fury they've learned to tame, not because they're incapable of anger, but because they're guided by something bigger. This isn't weakness, it's holy restraint. Because the same fire that could burn bridges can also light the path forward. And Scorpio has mastered the art of using that fire to rise, not to ruin. People often mistake Scorpio's stillness for indifference, but in truth, it's spiritual discipline. They know the fire is there, always, but they've learned not to waste it on people who don't deserve transformation. Because when Scorpio finally lets their fire speak, it doesn't scream, it enlightens, it awakens, and sometimes it walks away without a word, leaving only silence and the weight of what was lost. And God, He's been there the whole time, watching that inner fire, blessing it, refining it, preparing it for moments only Scorpio was born to carry. Life. Lesson. Scorpio, your calm is not emptiness, it is wisdom. Your fire is not rage, it is sacred power. Don't ever apologize for your depth. Don't shrink to make others comfortable with your silence. And don't let the world convince you that gentleness means weakness. God didn't give you this fire to burn others down. He gave it to you so that you could be the light in a world that's forgotten how to feel. Use it well, use it wisely, and when the moment comes, let it shine. Reason 4. God sees Scorpio's healing power, born from darkness. When God looks at a Scorpio, he doesn't just see someone who's been through pain. He sees a healer, forged by darkness, not destroyed by it. You see, Scorpio's gift is not just to survive the fire, it's to return from it with medicine in their hands. Most people assume healing comes from light. They imagine soft voices, clean energy, and gentle hands. But real healing, deep, soul-level healing, it comes from someone who's known the pit, who's lived in the shadows, and still chose to come back with wisdom, not bitterness. That's what God sees in Scorpio. A soul who has walked through betrayal, trauma, depression, addiction, abandonment. And instead of becoming a destroyer, they became a bridge for others to cross. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, the planet of death and rebirth, so they don't just understand pain, they speak its language. And because of that, they carry the rarest kind of healing, the kind that doesn't sugarcoat, the kind that doesn't flinch, the kind that sits with you in the dark without trying to drag you into the light too soon. Let me tell you a story. There was a Scorpio nurse in a trauma unit. She worked night shifts, dealing with some of the most horrific emergencies imaginable. Car crashes, overdoses, violence. And yet, everyone said the same thing about her. She made me feel safe, even when I was dying. She didn't panic when I cried. She just held my hand and told me, "You're not alone." Why? Because Scorpio doesn't fear the dark. They've already been there. God entrusted them with this power, not to fix everything, but to remind people that even in their worst moments, they are still seen, still worthy, still human. Scorpio heals not by avoiding pain, but by transforming it. They turn betrayal into boundaries. They turn heartbreak into art. They turn loss into leadership. They turn scars into sacred stories. And they do it all without needing the spotlight, because they don't heal to be admired. They heal to give others what they never received themselves. You'll never know how many people Scorpio has saved just by understanding their pain. You'll never know how many people have felt safe simply because Scorpio refused to judge them at their lowest. But God knows. He's seen every moment Scorpio held space for someone who was falling apart, even while they were still bleeding themselves. And that's why he trusts them. Because healing isn't about being perfect, it's about being real, about knowing how to sit in brokenness without running away. Scorpio has that power, and it's not learned, it's earned, through fire, through grief, through nights they thought would never end. Life lesson. Scorpio, your ability to heal doesn't come from light. It comes from the parts of your story you once tried to hide. Don't be ashamed of your scars. They are sacred maps that guide others home. God didn't give you this pain to punish you. He gave it to you because he knew you'd do something holy with it. So don't ever think you're too broken to help others. The truth is, the world needs your medicine. Because you didn't just survive the dark, you learned how to shine through it. Reason 5. God sees Scorpio's vision beyond what others can see. When God looks at a Scorpio, he sees a visionary, someone who can sense the storm long before the sky goes dark. Because Scorpio doesn't just see what's in front of them, they see through things, through smiles, through masks, through lies disguised as love. Scorpio's vision is not made of sight, it's made of knowing. You can't teach it, you can't fake it, you can't hide from it. Because Scorpio's intuition is not just a gut feeling, it's a divine frequency, and God is the one who tuned it. You see, most people look at the world through survival. What's safe? What benefits me? But Scorpio looks at the world through truth. What's real? What's hiding beneath the surface? What isn't being said? They don't need evidence to sense betrayal. They don't need facts to feel energy shift. They just know. And that knowing has cost them everything and saved them too. Let me tell you a story. There was a Scorpio woman who was in a business partnership. On paper, everything looked fine. The contracts were solid, the profits were strong, the partner smiled. But something inside her whispered, "Look closer." So she did. And what she found shocked her. Embezzlement, hidden debts, secret deals behind her back. She trusted her vision and got out before it all collapsed. People called her paranoid, too intense, too suspicious. But months later, that same partner was arrested for fraud. And the only reason she wasn't dragged down with him was because she listened to that inner voice, the one God gave her. That's what most don't understand. Scorpio's vision isn't always pretty. It often shows them things they don't want to see. People's true intentions, the cracks in the foundation, the shadows in a relationship that others still think is perfect. And yet, that vision is holy because God gave it to them not to judge the world, but to protect their purpose. You see, you can't walk a path of transformation if you're blinded by illusions. And Scorpio, they were born to pierce through illusion, to see what others won't, to call out what others are too scared to face. It's why they often feel lonely, because when you see the truth before anyone else, you become the first to walk away and the last to be understood. But God understands. He sees what Scorpio sees, and he knows it's not easy to carry that kind of clarity in a fog-filled world. Still, he trusts them with it, because Scorpio doesn't just see, they act, they move, they obey the unseen, even when it costs them comfort. And that's why their vision sharpens with time, because God knows they'll use it with wisdom, not ego. Life. Lesson, Scorpio. Your vision is a spiritual weapon. Use it not to control, but to protect. Not to expose, but to reveal what's real. Don't doubt yourself when no one else sees it yet. You weren't born to be understood by the blind. You were born to see and to walk by faith, not by appearances. And the next time someone calls you too intense, remember, they're just not ready for the level of truth you were built to handle. God sees what you see. Trust him and trust yourself. Reason 6. God sees Scorpio's emotional depth, where souls are reborn. When God looks at a Scorpio, he doesn't just see emotions. He sees oceans. Oceans of love, oceans of pain, oceans of truth no one else dares to swim in. Because Scorpio doesn't feel like everyone else, they don't skim the surface of life. They go deep, so deep that even they sometimes struggle to come back up for air. Most people live in the shallows. They fear depth, they fear intensity. They run from emotions that can't be labeled in a meme or expressed in 2 sentences. But Scorpio? They dive in head first. They want to feel the truth, even if it hurts. They want to understand the soul behind the face. They want to love with their whole being, body, mind, spirit, and shadow. And that kind of depth, it terrifies people, but not God. Because when God created Scorpio, He didn't design them to fit in. He designed them to transform. You see, emotional depth isn't a weakness. It's the spiritual terrain where healing, honesty, and soul evolution happen. And Scorpio lives there, full-time. Let me share a story. A Scorpio woman I once knew worked as a grief counselor. Her clients were parents who had lost children, the kind of grief most people can't bear to witness, let alone sit with. But she did. Not by offering cliches, not by quoting empty platitudes. She sat with them in silence. She held space for their rage. She allowed them to scream, cry, collapse, and never once turned away. One mother told her, "Everyone else told me to move on. You were the only one who let me stay broken for a moment, and that's what helped me begin to heal." That's Scorpio's gift. They don't fear darkness because they carry light inside it. They don't run from pain because they've learned that pain is the doorway to something holy. And God, He sees every moment Scorpio chose depth over comfort. Every time they loved someone messy, broken, complicated, and refused to walk away. Every time they showed up fully, not just when it was easy, but when it was unbearable. Most people can't love on that level. They either check out or shut down. But Scorpio, they stay. They feel everything. They hurt deeply. And still, they don't numb themselves because they know that feeling deeply is what makes us human and what makes us divine. God honors that because in a world full of artificial connection, Scorpio dares to feel it all. They are not afraid of truth, even when it shakes their soul. They welcome it and they rise with it. That's why Scorpio is the sign of death and rebirth, not because they crave drama, but because they are the sacred midwives of the soul. They walk people through their darkest hours and never flinch because they've walked their own and met God there. Life lesson. Scorpio, don't let anyone shame you for your emotional intensity. Your depth isn't a problem, it's a portal to healing, to transformation, to love that doesn't quit when things get heavy. God didn't make you deep so you could drown. He made you deep so others could learn how to swim. So don't shrink. Don't silence your heart, because someone out there is waiting for the exact kind of love you carry, the kind that changes lives just by being real. Reason 7. God sees Scorpio's silent strength, built without applause. When God looks at a Scorpio, He doesn't see a victim. He doesn't see someone crying out for attention or recognition. He sees quiet power, a strength so steady, so anchored, it doesn't need to shout to be known. Because Scorpio is the kind of strong that's not born from applause. It's born from surviving what would have broken others and doing it in silence. You see, Scorpio doesn't wait for the world to notice their struggle. They're not the type to wear their pain on their sleeve or parade their resilience like a trophy. They endure privately, they rise quietly, they rebuild from ruins while everyone else is still asking what happened. And that's what makes them divine warriors in God's eyes. Let me paint the picture for you. While others are loud about their efforts, Scorpio stays in the shadows, working, healing, planning, rising. When they hit rock bottom, they don't post about it, they disappear. And when they come back, no one recognizes them because the version that returns is forged in fire. Let me tell you a story. There was a Scorpio man who lost everything, his job, his partner, his home. But he didn't call everyone asking for help. He didn't complain to the world. He moved into a tiny apartment, took a job he was overqualified for, and worked in silence. For 2 years, no one noticed, no one praised him, but slowly he built something new, something better. And one day, when he launched his businesses and found success again, people said, "Wow, you're lucky. How did that happen?" But it wasn't luck. It was silent strength. It was Scorpio's holy endurance, built in the dark, away from the noise. And God saw every moment of it. He saw the nights Scorpio wanted to give up, but didn't. He saw the moments they stayed loyal to their vision, even when no one else believed in them. He saw the pain they turned into fuel, the fear they turned into focus, the grief they turned into greatness. Because Scorpio doesn't need attention to be strong. They are strength. It lives in their bones. It breathes through their silence. It glows in their eyes when they've decided, quietly, to never be defeated again. And that's the kind of strength God honors. Not the kind that demands recognition, but the kind that walks through fire and keeps going. Life lesson. Scorpio, your power doesn't require permission. You don't need anyone to clap for your growth or validate your journey. The quiet work you do in the dark, God sees it, and He's already preparing the stage for your breakthrough. So keep building in silence, keep showing up when no one sees you, because strength like yours doesn't burn out. It transforms everything it touches. You don't rise for applause. You rise because that's who you are. Reason 8. God sees Scorpio's soul contracts, the people they're meant to transform. When God looks at a Scorpio, He doesn't just see a person. He sees a soul on assignment, because Scorpio doesn't enter people's lives by accident. They don't stumble into relationships. They're sent, like sacred agents of transformation, like divine catalysts dressed in human skin. You see, there are some people in this world who arrive to make things easier. Then there are Scorpios who arrive to wake you up. Scorpios' relationships aren't random. They are soul contracts, written long before this lifetime even began. These contracts aren't always sweet. They're not always peaceful, but they are always necessary. Because when Scorpio loves you, they don't just touch your heart. They touch your shadow. They see the parts of you that are unhealed, the parts you've been hiding, even from yourself. And God sees this role they carry. He knows that Scorpio doesn't just show up to love, they show up to transform. Let me tell you a story. A Scorpio woman fell in love with a man who had never opened his heart. He was guarded, numb, and cold, emotionally unavailable to everyone before her. But she didn't run. She loved him anyway. She cracked him open slowly, not with pressure, but with presence. She stayed through his defenses. She listened to the pain he didn't have words for. She held the mirror up, gently, until he saw himself clearly for the first time. He once told her, "You didn't just love me, you rewired me." That's what Scorpio does. They enter your life and nothing stays the same. They're not here for surface-level love or shallow friendships. They come with depth, and with that depth, they uncover what's buried. Sometimes it looks like chaos. Sometimes people reject them because the mirror they bring is too honest. But God sees it all. He knows that every time Scorpio exposes a lie, every time they walk away from a connection that refuses to grow, every time they call out someone's truth, even when it hurts, they are fulfilling their contract. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, the god of the underworld. So naturally, they pull others into their depths. But it's not to destroy, it's to rebirth them. Scorpio sees your darkness and still chooses to love you. That's not weakness, that's divine power. And it's not something they always get thanked for. In fact, many times they're vilified, misunderstood, blamed. But God knows they did what they were meant to do, because transformation is rarely gentle, but it is always sacred. Life lesson. Scorpio, stop questioning why certain people entered your life and why you couldn't walk away even when it hurt. You were never just in a relationship. You were on a soul mission. You didn't just love them. You activated them. You helped them see what they were too afraid to face. And yes, maybe they left. Maybe they rejected the lesson. But the contract was honored, and heaven saw it all. Don't regret your intensity. It wasn't too much. It was the exact medicine their soul needed. And one day, they'll remember you as the turning point, the one who didn't just love them, but changed them forever. Reason 9. God sees Scorpio's emotional integrity. They can't fake what they don't feel. When God looks at a Scorpio, he sees a soul that refuses to lie, especially to themselves. Because Scorpio may tolerate many things in life, but fakeness is not one of them. They can smell it, they can feel it, they can sense it in the room before a word is even spoken. And more importantly, they cannot be it. Scorpio is emotionally honest to the point of discomfort. If they love you, you'll know. If they don't trust you, you'll feel it. If something feels off, they won't pretend it's okay, not even for appearances. Because to Scorpio, emotions are sacred. They're not tools of manipulation. They're not weapons. They're truth, raw, deep, unfiltered. And God sees the price they pay for this integrity. In a world where people fake smiles, fake relationships, fake everything's fine, Scorpio stands alone, unafraid to sit in what's real. And sometimes that makes them unpopular. It makes them the one who ruins the mood or kills the vibe. But Scorpio doesn't care about surface comfort. They care about soul truth. Let me share a story. A Scorpio woman I knew was in a relationship with a man everyone else thought was perfect. He had charm, charisma, said all the right things, but something inside her felt off. He never did anything wrong, technically, but she could feel the energy shift, the distance, the avoidance. And instead of waiting for proof, instead of faking peace, she confronted it. Calmly, directly, fearlessly. He denied it at first, but 2 weeks later, the truth came out. He had been emotionally cheating with someone else for months, and everyone asked her, "How did you know?" "He seemed so normal," her answer. "Because my heart knew what my mind didn't, and I couldn't pretend I didn't feel it." That's Scorpio. They don't need evidence to trust their gut. They don't need people's approval to follow their knowing. They won't fake a connection, a friendship, a job, or a smile, because to live out of alignment is to betray their own soul. God sees that kind of emotional integrity. He sees how Scorpio chooses truth, even when it costs them comfort. He sees how they walk away from people who look good on paper, but feel wrong in spirit. And he honors that, because emotional honesty is rare, it's hard, it's lonely, but it's also powerful. Scorpio would rather be alone and authentic than surrounded and pretending. And that makes them one of the most spiritually courageous signs of the zodiac. Life lesson. Scorpio, don't ever feel guilty for walking away from something your heart didn't trust, even if no one else saw the danger. Your ability to honor what's real, even when it's inconvenient, is divine. You weren't built to perform. You weren't made to play roles. You were born to live honestly, to feel deeply, speak truthfully, and act with soul-level alignment. In a world full of illusion, God created you to carry a higher emotional frequency. So keep honoring what you feel. It's not weakness, it's wisdom, and it's seen from above. Reason 10. God sees Scorpio's boundaries, a form of sacred self-respect. When God looks at a Scorpio, he doesn't see someone too private or too guarded. He sees a soul that has learned the holy art of boundaries. Because for Scorpio, saying no isn't cruelty, it's clarity. And walking away isn't weakness, it's self-respect wrapped in silence. Scorpio knows that their energy is sacred, their time is valuable, their presence is transformational. And not everyone deserves access to that. They've been burned too many times to keep the door wide open. They've loved people who took advantage. They've given second chances to those who never deserved a first. And through every betrayal, they learned the same lesson. Protect your peace. Protect your soul. So now, when something feels off, they leave. When someone lies, they cut contact. When energy doesn't match, they don't negotiate. They withdraw. And while the world might call them harsh or cold, God sees the truth. They are protecting the temple he placed within them. Let me tell you a real story. A Scorpio man I knew was in a long-term friendship with someone he had known since childhood. They had history, laughter, memories. But over time, the friend became manipulative. Every conversation was a power play. Every request came with guilt. Every compliment had a hidden edge. At first, Scorpio stayed, loyal, patient, forgiving. But then, one day, he stopped answering. No goodbye, no explanation, just silence. Years later, someone asked him why he ended it. His answer? Because when someone consistently disrespects my spirit, I don't argue, I leave. That's Scorpio. They don't owe you 1,000 warnings. They won't beg you to treat them right. They won't explain the obvious. Their boundary is the final word, and that boundary is sacred. God sees every moment Scorpio draws a line, not out of ego, but out of alignment. Not because they're angry, but because they've finally chosen peace. And here's what makes Scorpio different from most signs. They don't set boundaries just to keep people out. They set them to protect the version of themselves they fought so hard to become. The healed version, the grounded version, the unbothered version that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, and doesn't fold just to keep fake peace. Because Scorpio isn't here to be liked, they're here to be whole. And God sees the discipline behind every quiet exit. He honors the emotional maturity it takes to love someone and still choose yourself. Life lesson. Scorpio, your boundaries aren't walls. They're wisdom. They're the scars that learned how to speak. They are your soul's way of saying, this is how I protect what God gave me. So don't feel guilty for walking away. Don't apologize for going quiet. Don't question whether they deserved another chance. You're not being dramatic. You're being divinely guided. God didn't create you to be accessible to everyone. He created you to be discerning, because your energy is a mirror, and only those ready to face themselves can sit in your presence. Honor that. Protect that, because your boundary is your blessing. Reason 11. God sees Scorpio's power to awaken others. Just by being themselves, when God looks at a Scorpio, he sees more than just a person. He sees a mirror, a walking, breathing truth detector that wakes people up, whether they want it or not. Because Scorpio doesn't need to say much to shake your world. They don't need a microphone, a spotlight, or even permission. Their very presence carries a frequency that activates the soul, and God designed them that way. You see, some people enter a room and nothing changes. But when a Scorpio walks in, everything shifts. The energy thickens, the lies tremble, the masks feel heavier. That's not by accident, it's spiritual. Scorpio doesn't expose people with judgment. They expose people by existing. Because when you stand next to someone who has done the inner work, who has faced their own demons, who has learnt to love without illusion, you can't help but be confronted by the ways you've avoided your own truth. That's the awakening power Scorpio holds, and God sees how difficult that mission can be. Let me share a story. There was a Scorpio woman who never tried to be a teacher or a healer. She was just herself, quiet, intense, deeply intuitive. At her job, people would often open up to her within minutes. They would cry, confess, reflect. She never asked them to. One day, a coworker said to her, "You know, I don't know what it is about you, but when I talk to you, I feel like I finally have to face who I really am." And that's the essence of Scorpio. They don't awaken people with noise, they awaken them with presence. God sees every soul Scorpio has unknowingly helped, every friend who left the relationship they were trapped in, every family member who stopped pretending, every lover who started healing their trauma. Not because Scorpio told them to, but because being near Scorpio made lying to themselves impossible. This gift isn't always easy to carry. People project. They accuse Scorpio of being too intense, too much, too emotional. But what they're really saying is, "You're waking up something inside me that I'm not ready to face." And that's okay, because awakening is rarely comfortable, but always divine. Scorpio doesn't have to fix people. They don't have to convince anyone. They simply embody the truth so deeply that it radiates out like light in a cave. And God, He watches it all and smiles, because He knows the ripple effect one Scorpio can have. He knows that just by walking in alignment, Scorpio activates dormant hearts. And even if they never get credit for it, they are often the silent spark behind someone else's transformation. Life lesson. Scorpio, you don't need to try harder to change the world. Just being fully, fiercely, authentically you is already shaking people awake. Stop dimming your light to make others feel comfortable. Stop second-guessing your power. Stop apologizing for the intensity that's coded into your DNA. You weren't created to blend in. You were created to ignite, to challenge, to pierce, to awaken souls who've been sleepwalking through life. God sees you. He gave you this fire, not to burn people, but to light them up. So keep shining, even when it's lonely, because your presence is a prophecy. Reason 12. God sees Scorpio's rebirth. The phoenix that can never be destroyed. When God looks at a Scorpio, He doesn't see who they were. He sees who they're becoming, even when they're still in ashes. Because Scorpio isn't just the sign of intensity, it's the sign of resurrection. Every Scorpio walks with death, not always the physical kind, but the death of illusions, the death of old selves, the death of relationships, identities, beliefs they once clung to like lifelines. And through it all, they rise, over and over again, like the phoenix, the eternal symbol of Scorpio's soul, burned down to nothing, forgotten by the world, buried under betrayal, failure, abandonment, but never truly destroyed. Because Scorpio doesn't just survive endings, they become someone new through them. And God sees this sacred cycle. He doesn't fear Scorpio's darkness. He designed them to walk through it, to gather fire from it, and to come back shining. Let me share a story. A Scorpio man lost everything in 1 year: his marriage, his job, his home, and his identity. He had been the provider, the leader, the one who always had it together, until he didn't. For 6 months, he vanished. He didn't talk to anyone. He spiraled inward. He faced the wreckage. He sat in shame, grief, rage, until he met something else, peace. Not the kind you get from running, but the kind you get from letting go. And when he returned, he wasn't the same. He didn't go back to his old life. He built a new one, rooted in truth, in depth, in purpose. He became a mentor to others who were lost. And when someone asked him how he did it, he said, "I died, and I was reborn." That's the Scorpio way. They don't fear transformation. They are transformation. And God, He watches every descent, every rock bottom, every internal collapse that the world never sees. And He knows. That Scorpio will not only rise, they'll rise with power, with clarity, and with a purpose stronger than before, because the phoenix doesn't return the same, it returns immortal. Scorpio doesn't come back just to survive, they come back to build something indestructible, and that's what makes them holy. Not that they never fall, but that they refuse to stay broken. Life lesson. Scorpio, your journey is not about being untouched, it's about being unbreakable, in spirit. Don't resent the losses, don't curse the fire. It was all designed to reveal who you really are, a soul that can't be buried, a light that no darkness can kill. When the world thinks you're gone, that's when your rebirth begins. God didn't build you to be safe, He built you to be eternal. So rise, Scorpio, again and again, and let the ashes become your crown. Conclusion. When God looks at a Scorpio, He sees a miracle in motion. So now that you've heard all 12 ways God sees Scorpio, let's ask the question again, do you agree? Because if you're a Scorpio, maybe you've spent your life being misunderstood, too intense, too quiet, too all or nothing. Maybe people only saw your surface and never stopped to wonder about the storm, the silence, or the sacred fire beneath. But God saw, and He still sees. He sees the pain you carried with grace, the loyalty you gave even when it wasn't returned, the vision you followed when no one else believed in it, the healing you offered from the wounds you never showed, the silence that wasn't cold but disciplined, the boundaries that weren't ego but self-respect, the emotional truth you stood in even when it made others uncomfortable, the lives you awakened just by being who you are, and the ashes you rose from, again and again. Scorpio, you are not too much. You are a soul trained in depth. You are a frequency most people can't hear, but heaven tunes into clearly. The world may mislabel you, but God never has. He calls you a phoenix, a mirror, a truth teller, a spiritual warrior in a world full of actors. And that means you don't need to explain yourself anymore. You don't need to shrink to fit into rooms too small for your purpose. You don't need to perform. You just need to remember who you are and who you were sent here to be. Final life lesson for Scorpio. You are not here to be liked. You are here to wake people up. You are not here to stay the same. You are here to transform and help others do the same. So honor your depth, trust your fire, and walk like someone who knows God walks beside them, even when the room is silent. You are more than your zodiac. You are a divine mystery, unfolding in real time. Let's talk in the comments. Scorpio family, which of these 12 ways did you most deeply feel in your spirit? Was there one that made you tear up? One that made you feel seen for the first time? Tell me below. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Path to Buddha Wisdom. This is just the beginning. We are building a space for Scorpio souls to be understood, awakened, and empowered. So hit that button, because this is where transformation lives.